Hello and warm welcome to everyone. Today we will discuss about blood groups, specifically ABO grouping and RH grouping, and in the end there will be few words about coagulation of blood and lymph. Before starting the topic on blood groups, there are two words we need to be familiar with: antigen and antibodies. Antigens are substances that cause an immune response in the body. Antigens can be endogenous or exogenous. Endogenous means internal or from inside the body, and exogenous means external, that is from outside the body, like bacteria, virus, parasites, even food particles contain antigens. And antibodies are substances which are produced by the immune system in response to an antigen. For example, if a bacteria B enters our body and that bacteria has an antigen X on its surface, our immune system recognizes the antigen and produces antibodies against it to neutralize or kill the bacteria. This is a very simplified explanation of how antibodies work. Now moving forward, there is a concept of self-antigen. The cells of our body also have antigens on it, but our immune system does not produce antibodies against them normally, because our immune system recognizes our own cells as self. Now let's apply what we have learnt about antigens, antibodies and self-antigens to the topic of blood groups. On the cell membrane of human RBCs are blood group antigens. Most important and best known are A and B antigens. The blood group antigens are also called as agglutinogens. A and B antigens are the most important antigens, but there are many more antigens present on the surface of RBCs. The ABO blood grouping system is based on A and B antigens and are divided into four major blood types: A, B, AB and O. Blood group A has antigen A present on the surface of RBCs. Blood group B has antigen B present on the surface of RBCs. Blood group AB has both antigen A and B present, and blood group O has neither. Blood group O does not have A or B antigen. An interesting fact about these antigens A and B are that they are found in other tissues as well. So they are present on the RBCs and they are also present in the salivary glands, pancreas, kidneys, liver, lungs, testes, semen, amniotic fluid, etc. In the chapter of digestion and absorption, we had studied that there are symbiotic microorganisms present in the large intestine. So in the intestine of small babies, that is infants, there is intestinal bacteria. The antigen of these intestinal bacteria is very similar to the A and B antigen. And also a lot of food products which we give to these babies have antigens which are very similar to A and B antigens. Now if you remember, we discussed earlier that antibodies are substances produced by immune system in response to an antigen. And antibodies are not produced against self-antigens. So infants develop antibodies against antigens which are not present in their own cells. So for example, blood group A develops anti-B antibodies, that is antibodies against antigen B. Blood group B develops anti-A antibodies. Blood group AB does not produce antibodies, and blood group O develop both anti-A and anti-B antibodies as they do not have any antigen. And this is how we acquire antibodies in different blood groups. So let's revise. People with blood group A have antigen A present on their RBCs and antibodies anti-B present in their plasma. People with blood group B have antigen B present on their RBCs and antibodies anti-A present in their plasma. People with blood group AB have both A and B antigen present on their RBCs, and as both A and B are self-antigens, they do not have antibodies against them. So anti-A and anti-B both are absent in blood group AB. In blood group O, antigen A and B both are absent, so their bodies produce both anti-A and anti-B antibodies. This is the table given in your textbooks. So as we have seen earlier, blood group A has antigen A present on the RBCs and anti-B antibodies in plasma. It can receive blood from A and O blood group. Blood group B has antigen B present on the RBCs, anti-A antibodies in plasma, and it can receive blood from blood group B and O. Blood group AB has both A and B antigen present on the RBCs, no antibodies, and it can receive blood from AB blood group, A, B and O blood group. Blood group O has no antigen present on the RBCs, and it has anti-A and anti-B both antibodies present in the plasma, and it can receive blood from blood group O only. So as you can see, blood group AB can receive blood from all the four blood groups AB, B, A and O. Therefore they are called as universal recipients, and blood group O can donate blood to all the four blood groups. Therefore they are called as universal donors. So what do you think? Why is it important to learn all the different antigens and antibodies present in different blood groups? And what will happen if a person with blood group A is transfused with blood of blood group B? What do you think will happen if this is done? So to understand that, let's assume that we have taken a slide, and this slide has two spaces, space 1 and space 2. And we have filled both these spaces with plasma of a person of blood group A. So do you remember the plasma of a person of blood group A has which antibodies? Yes, they have anti-B antibodies. So in plasma of number 1, if we put some amount of blood of another person but of the same blood group A, and we mix plasma and that blood and then observe under a microscope, we will see there is no reaction because the plasma does not contain antibodies. There will be no clumping. Now in the plasma of number 2, if we mix blood of blood group B and observe under the microscope, we will see lot of clumping of RBCs. The antibody anti-B present in the plasma will react with the B antigen present on the RBCs and will cause clumping of the RBCs, also known as agglutination. So if a person with blood group A is given blood of blood group B, the anti-B antibodies present in his plasma will react with B antigen on the transfused blood and cause clumping of those RBCs. This results in destruction of RBCs, that is hemolysis. It can cause shock, renal failure, etc. Severe transfusion reactions can cause death. Therefore, it is very important to check blood group and cross-match donor and recipient blood before giving blood transfusion. So going back to the table, as blood group AB do not have antibodies against both A and B antigens, they can receive blood from all four blood groups and are called as universal recipients. And as they have both A and B antigen present on the RBCs, they can donate only to blood group AB. And blood group O have both anti-A and anti-B antibodies present in the plasma, so they can receive blood only from blood group O. And they do not have A and B antigens present on the RBCs, so they can donate to all four blood groups and are called as universal donors. Let's move on to Rh grouping. Rh antigen was discovered in rhesus monkeys, hence they gave it the name Rh from rhesus. Later, a similar antigen was found to be present on the surface of RBCs of about 80% humans. So if Rh antigen is present on the surface of RBCs, they are called as Rh positive, and if Rh antigen is absent, they are called as Rh negative. If a Rh negative person is exposed to Rh positive blood, if he is transfused with Rh positive blood, he will produce antibodies against the Rh antigen. because Rh antigen is not a self antigen for him. Therefore, it is important to do ABO grouping and Rh grouping both before giving blood transfusions. A special scenario of Rh incompatibility, that is Rh mismatching, is observed between the blood of Rh negative pregnant mother with Rh positive blood of the fetus. Let's assume that a lady who has Rh negative blood gets pregnant for the first time and the fetus, that is the baby inside her womb, has Rh positive blood. We know that fetus gets nutrition from mother through placenta, so nutrients, antibodies, etc. can cross the placental barrier and reach the fetus. But fetal blood does not cross the placental barrier normally. So during pregnancy, mother's blood does not get exposed to the Rh positive fetal blood. But this can happen during delivery, and if she is exposed to the Rh positive fetal blood, she starts making antibodies against the Rh antigen. And as the first baby has already been delivered, so that baby will not have problems because of these antibodies. Now after few years, this lady is pregnant again with her second child. Let's look at two scenarios in the second pregnancy. In the first scenario, let's assume that this fetus also has Rh negative blood. So if the fetus also has Rh negative blood, even if there are Rh antibodies in the mother's blood, those antibodies do not have Rh antigen to react with, and this baby will not have any problems because of these antibodies. In the second scenario, the fetus has Rh positive blood. So we know that mother is Rh negative with Rh antibodies in her blood, and this fetus has Rh positive blood. Now we have a huge problem. The maternal antibodies will cross the placenta and react with the Rh antigen present on the fetal RBCs. This causes destruction of the fetal RBCs. This can lead to severe anemia of the fetus. It can lead to severe jaundice of the fetus, and in severe cases it can be fatal and cause death of the fetus. This condition is called as erythroblastosis fetalis. This is a very severe condition and needs to be recognized. It can be prevented by giving anti-Rh antibodies to the mother after the delivery of the first child. So now we all know that if mother has Rh negative blood and the first baby has Rh positive blood, Rh antibodies are made in the mother's blood. These Rh antibodies are neutralized by giving anti-Rh antibodies to the mother after the delivery of the first child. So once these antibodies are neutralized, in the second pregnancy, there are no Rh antibodies to cause trouble to the second child, and hence it can be prevented. So in practice, both ABO grouping and Rh grouping are done together, and thus a blood group A can be A positive or A negative. If he is Rh positive, then we say that he is A positive, and if he is Rh negative, we say that he is A negative. Similarly, blood group B can be B positive or B negative, AB can be AB positive and AB negative, and O can be O positive or O negative. Again, practically O negative is the safest blood to give if blood group of the patient is not known and it is an emergency transfusion. Then O negative is practically the safest blood to give because it does not have A antigen, B antigen or Rh antigen. But from exam point of view, it is enough to remember that O blood group is universal donor and AB is universal recipient. Moving on to coagulation of blood. Coagulation of blood is a process which prevents excessive loss of blood from the body. Let's look at three terminologies. The first is clot or coagulum. A clot is formed by network of threads of fibrin with trapped, dead or damaged formed elements of blood. So where do we get these threads of fibrin from? Fibrin is converted from fibrinogen, which is soluble, to insoluble fibrin by the enzyme thrombin, which is present in plasma. And in turn, this thrombin is formed from inactive prothrombin by the enzyme thrombokinase. So let's try to understand how a fibrin clot is formed. Actually, coagulation of blood is a part of hemostasis. Please do not confuse hemostasis with homeostasis. Hemostasis is the process to prevent or stop bleeding, and homeostasis is the process of maintaining a stable internal environment suitable for sustaining life. Hemostasis has 4 stages. If there is an injury, there is constriction of blood vessels in that region. This decreases the blood flow and decreases the blood loss. The second step is formation of a temporary platelet plug. Platelets accumulate and try to seal the area of injury. The third step is activation of coagulation cascade, and finally a stable fibrin plug or a final clot is formed. We can understand these steps with the help of a diagram. There is an injury and there is damage to blood vessels which result in blood loss, and the damage to the blood vessel results in activation of the inactivated clotting factors present in the plasma. So once the clotting factors get activated, the coagulation cascade begins. Simultaneously, there is vasoconstriction which decreases blood flow to the region of injury, and platelets get activated and form a temporary platelet plug which seals the site of injury. In the end of the coagulation cascade is the thrombokinase complex, which converts prothrombin to thrombin, and thrombin in turn converts soluble fibrinogen to insoluble fibrin strand. These fibrin strands strengthen the temporary platelet plug and form insoluble final clot. This was a simple explanation of hemostasis. Also remember that calcium has important role in clotting of blood. And finally, a few words about lymph. Let's look at the diagram. We all know that blood is pumped by the heart into the arteries, and from the arteries it reaches to the capillaries. In the arterial end of the capillaries, because of high pressure, fluid moves out from the capillaries into the tissues, and this is called as the interstitial fluid. Towards the venous end of the capillaries, pressure inside the capillaries decrease and some amount of interstitial fluid drains back into the capillaries in the blood. This blood is taken by the veins back to the heart. Most of the interstitial fluid which remains in the tissues is drained by the lymphatic vessels and it forms the lymph. The lymphatic vessels then drain into the major veins. And the lymphatic system has many lymph nodes which contain lymphocytes. Let's look at the properties of interstitial fluid and lymph. Interstitial fluid has same mineral distribution as that of the plasma. It is the fluid which is coming out of the capillaries, and it contains oxygen and nutrients which it provides to the cells. Moving on to lymph, it is a colorless fluid. It contains specialized lymphocytes. We saw that lymphatic system contains many lymph nodes. These lymph nodes contain lymphocytes. These lymphocytes are circulating in the lymphatics and are responsible for the defense of the body. Lymph is also helpful in carrying nutrients and hormones. In the gastrointestinal tract, absorption of fats is done through the lymphatic system, through the lymph. In the small intestine, there are lacteals through which the fats are absorbed and transported. This brings us to the end of the video. In the next video, we will discuss about circulatory pathways and human circulatory system. Thank you for your patient hearing.